it will make a bunch of money. And I'm not changing my outlook commercially for this film that I had, even with this new, controversy, whatever you want to call it, about how the character was or wasn't changed. You guys can think that this movie is going to drop off 65 or whatever percent the second weekend. It is highly unlikely. And that's because, number one, there's no competition for this. And number two, unlike the previous entries by the Walt Disney Company with Snow White and Little Mermaid, nothing about this movie was telling audiences to stay the F away because it's not what you're expecting.
Renegade Online.
It may have a little bit of fallout, but let me tell you something about the discourse around this movie. You know where I'm seeing it, and the only place I'm seeing it is amongst the Disney nerds and us.
Exactly.
The normies are not talking about it.
Exactly.
You don't see it in Variety. Nobody else is feeling this way about the movie but us. And I'll be honest with you guys. Is there certain elements of this movie that are changed? Absolutely. Do I agree with all of them? No. But from a writing standpoint, I understand why they changed them. In fact, just before I come on the show, I read an interview with the director in certain instances why they changed certain things. And I get it. I'm not saying it's a good thing necessarily, but there are also people misrepresenting exactly what happens in the movie. Okay? I'm not going to get into spoilers, but it doesn't go exactly the way people are saying it. Okay? And that needs to be reiterated.
I get that. And everybody's going to have a different view on what they saw, right? So just for clarity, for the audience's sake, let me say this. So earlier today, I was on George the Giant Slayer show. It starts about 3 or 4 hours before we do. And Stephanie was there, and some of the other guests were there that had seen it and, confirmed a lot of what I had read from some of these articles. We'll get to some of these in a minute.
Well, and that's the thing is some of these people that are confirming it are some of the people that are feeding into this. And I'm not saying Stephanie specifically, but look, 5 seconds for spoilers. Plug your ears if you're that worried about it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, Nani does not give up Lilo to go to college. That is not true. What happens in the movie is she is told she has till Friday to get insurance, keep a job, and get the house clean. Lilo gets hurt, goes into the hospital after she almost drowns, right? Just like in the original film. Mm-hmm. She does not have the insurance she's supposed to have. The social worker tells her, you have a choice. We can take Lilo, or you can sign her over to this neighbor who is basically an extended family friend, and she won't be taken far away from you. And we'd rather do that because it helps with the transition. So at that point, Nani has no choice. The school stuff comes in after that because she gave up going to school when her parents died. People are misrepresenting that. Now, for better or worse, you cannot like that, but don't misrepresent what happens in the film, because I see a lot of people feeding into that, saying that Nani is some strong woman who doesn't need family. That's not even true either. They paint her as a very immature and irresponsible person. So how can she both be a girl boss and immature and irresponsible at the same time? Because that's exactly why she loses Lilo in this film. And the reason they did this is what I've been saying the last few days, and this is basically what the interview I just read said, is they needed to add some character to Nani and make things more realistic and grounded, which is the same reason why they got rid of Gantu, is because you already had Jumba there and Pleakley, and he just comes in at the last part of the movie, and he was there until the latter part of the writing, and they didn't get rid of him for budgetary reasons, even though I believe that's probably why. They say they got rid of him because they didn't necessarily need him, because you already have the same story reasons there between Pleakley and Jumba, and I don't think they were planning on a sequel up front, because I'm still not convinced, even though some people have seen Easter eggs, that in this version there is all these other experiments. I'm thinking Stitch was just experimented on 625 times, and he's going to get experimented on again to turn him into 626. That's kind of the point, and they just make Jumba out to be he wants to take over the galaxy. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's the changes that were made in the film. Now, that being said, the rest of the film is almost verbatim what the original film is. Almost scene for scene, shot for shot. There's little drops of lines here and there, and there's additions here and there. But other than the new characters added to the table, there's not that much that's changed, and most of the general audience is seeing that way. That's why it's getting an A on the cinema score. That's why the Rotten Tomatoes is in like what, the 70s or 80s, I think, right now.
I gotta go back and look. Yeah, but no, look,
and I get it.
I
can agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. Does it live up to the original? Hell no. Like I just said, the original is still better. But I understand from a writing standpoint, because in the original film, Nani doesn't really have much of a character to draw from, right? And the way she's treated in the original film compared to this film is a bit different. And some people are going to have a problem with that. But that's because they expanded her character. They gave her a background. They gave her a history. And they made her an actual 18-year-old in this movie. See, because that's the thing. She's supposed to be 18, 19 in the original film. Fine, but she doesn't feel like it. She feels like somebody in her 20s because she doesn't feel like she's just out of high school or anything like that. This Nani does.
Well, here's the thing.
For better or worse. That's all I'm going to say on that. I gave the movie, like I said, a 10. It's a 10 out of 10 for the original, but only an 8 out of 10 for this. I'm done.
No, that's fine. And I appreciate all your input there. And great. I like I said, I haven't seen it yet. And I've told people, like, full disclosure, my intention was, as I've said months ago when the first trailer dropped, I do want to see this. But I had to make a call. Which one am I more interested in? My kids are largely old enough they can go see their movie on their own. I took the time to go see Mission Impossible Thursday because that's what I was hyped up and waiting for 2 years now. And I haven't gotten to Lilo and Stitch yet, but I still plan to. I want to go see this because I loved the original, like you.
And they also set it up in a way that it's a future for their family, right? It's not set up in a way in the film the way people are representing it. And I get that. Some people are going to have issues with it, and I totally understand that.
Well, we'll get to some of the articles on that to put it in context and see. Because, again, the question is separating the critical critique from the commercial success or failure of this. This movie right now, like we said, and this is the key thing, because I know there's people that watch this show that hate us, and they watch us just because they hate us, which is great. Welcome aboard. We don't care. We welcome everybody. But the fact of the matter is that I have been a fan of this movie coming out since we saw the first trailer. So that's that. And we've been calling this movie, this was going to be Disney's first and maybe only major success of this year, because Fantastic Four damn sure ain't going to be one.
All I can say otherwise is, does this really need to exist? No, but it's going to make a bunch of money.
It is. And that's the key for it, is that it will make a bunch of money. And I'm not changing my outlook commercially for this film that I had, even with this new, controversy, whatever you want to call it, about how the character was or wasn't changed. I pushed back on the show earlier. You guys can think that this movie is going to drop off 65 or whatever % the second weekend. It is highly unlikely. And that's because, number one, there's no competition for this. And number two, unlike the previous entries by the Walt Disney Company with Snow White and Little Mermaid, nothing about this movie, unlike the other two I just mentioned, was telling audiences to stay the F away because it's not what you're expecting, right? Little Mermaid told audiences, this is not what you're expecting. Snow White, Rachel Zegler's own personal fat mouth, told audiences for a year before the movie came out, this is not what you're expecting. As of right now, and I'm completely agreeing with you, the normies don't care. The normies have already committed to seeing this movie. And I said this several hours ago on George's show when everybody was wondering what the drop-off would be. And I said, probably not much, because the commitment's already there. Now, is it possible it could radically alter between now and next weekend? Sure. I just don't see a whole lot of likelihood of that. And I still see this movie legging out pretty comfortably to about $1 billion, because this movie has no competition for another 12 days at this point, give or take.
When does How to Train Your Dragon? Yeah, I was going to say
12 days from now. Yeah. June 6th. How to Train Your Dragon, because that's going to consume IMAX. It's going to consume PLFs. Disney, typical fashion, right? They go into theaters with a show like this with Lilo and Stitch. We want at least 2 weeks of guaranteed PLFs. They're not going to get them exclusively because of Mission Impossible. There's some shared elements there. MI has the IMAX screens.
And that can hang on, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit too, probably.
Exactly. There's a big difference. But Pro
I just want to say, with Pro joining us, how you doing, Pro?
Happy to be here.
glad to have you. I just want to say I do have a barometer for this because I did actually happen to talk to no less than 3 families that happened to see the movie this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I just
Lilo
asked them
Stitch,
what they,
yeah.
and I just asked them how they felt. And these would be normie families, right? So no attachment to any of us, and they're not into all this.
Right. They're not watching a bunch of 40-something-year-old guys on YouTube.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Each and every one of them, the kids loved it and the parents adored it. Not a single one of them had any of the problems we're having. And I get it. And I said this on my initial review, and I think I may even said it on your show, Pro, where I get it. The people who are the biggest fans of the franchise are going to be the ones that have the biggest problems with this movie. And that's understandable, right? Well, in the middle, though, it's like, what are you going to do? You're either going to have a 1-to-1 remake, and most people are going to go, what's the point? Or you're going to have things change so drastically that everybody's not going to want to see it in the end. I don't know if they hit a happy medium here or not necessarily, but I agree with you guys, at least with what Valiant said. I don't know if Pro agrees or not, but that overall, what we're saying in this community and the Disnerds are saying is not really going to affect the general audience in this case, like it did with all the things you said. It doesn't have a Rachel Zegler. It doesn't have a Little Mermaid problem. So I think that's going to help the second weekend.
Weren't they thinking, though, that this could top 200 million on the 4-day domestically? I mean, wasn't that part of the prediction is that
I initially remember that. But
no, I never saw a $200 million 4-day domestic only. I mean,
because this is breaking Memorial Day records as it is now for certain things.
Unadjusted for inflation, yes. I mean, and that's the key thing.
Even the little thing I sent you in the background, between Mission Impossible and this, they have sold more popcorn than ever on Memorial Day.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, this is definitely a big weekend for theaters, although just from a standpoint of ticket sales, and if you properly adjusted for movie ticket price inflation, it's not quite the biggest, but I'm not trying to take away from it. It's definitely up there. Now,
it's more back to normal, yeah.
Yeah, raw dollars, it's amazing. Now, that being said, the question is, where does this movie go from here? So again, my contention is that for all we're going to discuss on this from a narrative change standpoint, that was probably certainly influenced by the Disney story or Stories Matter group at Disney, just like Snow White, just like Little Mermaid. This had some influence as well. The question is, does it actually impact audience behavior? And this is why I brought up the fact of the variance between how these movies were either conscientiously marketed or not. And when I say conscientiously or not, of course, Rachel Zegler going out there, running her stupid frickin' mouth, one of the most absolutely retarded human beings in the history of the world, running her mouth, she sank Snow White largely. The movie was shit. Right? It was a terrible movie, a terrible remake. No, it was an awful movie, an awful story that had no resemblance to the original. But Rachel Zegler went out and told the whole world that this movie is garbage, and nobody went to go see it. That didn't happen with Lilo and Stitch at all.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.